Hello and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the planes. Each episode we explore one of the planes of existence as outlined in the Great Wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. Hooray, we're back! We actually did it on time.
Yeah.
Yes, we're back for round 2 of Sigil this time. So the second part to the Outlands and Sigil. And yeah, very excited for this one. Anyway, as always, I keep forgetting. I'm Fiona.
No, I'm just run straight into it. Yeah,
we just run straight into it. My name's Fiona, and with me, as always, for the last 17 episodes of DM's Travel Book Club is my co-host Hamilton, who is here.
Hi, yes, I'm here. Hello. Hello, Fiona. How are you?
I am good. Right.
Good.
Pleasantries over. Beep, boop, beep.
I can tell you're very excited to get on with Sigil because you're just straight into it. So, why don't? Well, that's where we're going. Obviously, that's where we are. Why don't you then explain to us very briefly then? Because I explained Sigil last week. Why don't you try having a go at what is Sigil?
Right.
In a nutshell.
So, as I understood it, so this is coming from the main, from what I understand of the Planescape book, Sigil and Beyond. It's so funny because I genuinely had not come across Sigil before. I've never ran it in any games. I hadn't, I've heard of it being talked about by Matt Mercer, Critical Roles, about this idea of the City of Doors and basically being a place of portals. So I actually hadn't thought much to this sort of what it was, other than it could be a generic city or town, but it just happens to be a meeting place, like the meeting place of the cosmos, right? So I was like, cool, great, I don't need to know any more about it. Turns out that's not what it is at all. It's great. It's got its own history and all sort of, but essentially it is at the centre of the Outlands, the sort of plane that we discussed in the last episode, that sort of plane of ultimate is the word I was looking at, ultimate neutrality, essentially, up the top of a huge spire, and it is, as it's described in the book, it is like the inside of a tire. It's almost like donut shape, with the whole city itself underneath, inside, essentially, following that shape, that curvature around, and is connected like that, which is very much like my version of Inception. And I just find, I cannot process this. Where are you? What's going on? It's a bit like that sort of, if you've ever watched Treasure Planet, with the Disney thing, there's a moon that does something similar. There's like this whole city on a moon, but it's like a crescent moon, that one.
Yeah.
And it's as far as I'm aware, it is ruled over by the Lady of Pain, who is your favourite person of all time, which I'm sure I'm very excited to hear what you make of her, essentially. This idea of sort of a being that everyone sort of fears and just lets get on with, essentially, because she is so powerful. So this idea that this entity herself, her power doesn't allow any deities in or anything else. It is just her domain. She's that powerful and can just destroy them as and when. And then there's all these wards as well. So yeah, there was a lot more to it than I was expecting.
Sigil, I think, is something that for me super captured my imagination from the off when I jumped into Planescape when I was younger, and when I played the Torment games when I was younger. And I think it's such a truly fantasy city.
Yes.
Like when we were doing Spelljammer and we were like, they really have nailed fantasy in space. Like, it's not sci-fi, it's definitely fantasy in space. And this is like I think Sigil is a very unique, even on the level of like Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I think it's it's got that level of like complexity and difference and sort of otherness that I don't think, from my understanding of D&D, didn't get until you got to Planescape. It was truly very, very 90s in its own way as well, because the 90s was so, I remember so much of it, particularly maybe it's more my parents than other people's parents, but new age music and people like getting into crystals and sort of spiritualism and stuff like that. But that sort of is so emblematic within the Planescape setting, and Sigil itself as this sort of philosophically defined space where ideas are king or queen. They're sort of like the epitome of everything, and what everyone's fighting over is the belief of the universe.
Yes.
But in these very quasi, very pop psychology ways. Because I remember reading an interview about it, saying that Zeb Grubb, was it named Zeb Cook and
Jeff Grubb.
Yeah. both
think it should be the other way around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So both were having a conversation when coming up with Planescape, and they said what we want to do with these factions. I think I mentioned this on our factions play of Sigil. Is that it is like they went back to all their college students that they knew and groups they knew when they were in college, and like all the pop philosophy they had. So they went, dude, what if the universe is like just like in our mind and everyone else isn't real, and that's the sign of one, or like dude, what if all gods are just experiential variations of ourselves, which is the thought, so it's just you just got to add the dude, what if, and and that's and whatever psychology someone comes up with in that moment is a faction. And so it just kind of ties into this whole that sort of culture of the time, and that's why and it is in that way so unique. So that is what I love about it.
It's very relatable, isn't it? That's I can totally I definitely have been like, because I did philosophy as my degree. I have been in those seminars and I've gone, what the fuck?
What the fuck are you talking about?
But it's true, like that whole idea that, again, you'll be able to tell who this is off the top of it. I can't remember, but it's that, if I can think of something, it does exist somewhere in the universe, probably on Mecanus. That stuff like that, because that is such a, otherwise why would I be able to think of it? It's just so interesting on that front. And speaking
that's your Tao of physics, isn't it? That's your Tao of physics, which is the idea of like you can, if the universe is as creative as we are made of the universe, and therefore our brains are part of the universe. So if our brains can imagine something, then it must physically be possible to create, because we could never imagine something impossible because we are born of this reality. So there's that. See, pop philosophy for you.
It's so good. And it's interesting to come into it because again, I've always had this assumption that D&D is hack and slash. You don't really have these deep conversations or thoughts that build up this whole thing. And so, as we said in the last episode, we talked about like Planescape. There was this big sort of primer at the beginning of that sort of book, just talked about like, hey, you really do need to think about Planescape, because obviously it's very interesting, but for them to engage in it, you need to think of all these things, because it is philosophers with clubs, these factions. They have the thought, that's what drives them. The other thing I wanted to mention is that there's a little bit on this bit about making Sigil your own, and as you kind of said, it's not a sci-fi place. It is not prime material 20th century place. It is medieval in its flavor. So don't make guns like sci-fi guns or anything like that. It's portals. It's just like it's a medieval city bustling with just so happens to have these magical portals, but it's not like a sci-fi thing. The one thing I really liked about this advice as well, there was some other things. There was like, be inconveniently convenient. Like, these portals pop up where you want them to go somewhere, or there's no access to them for this time. There's a invisible wall or whatever, like the video game aspect to it. But also, there was a little line that said, avoid cute little businesses. Like, get rid of those titles and stuff, because it's not like that. It's not like that.
It's a very grimy city as well. I think what I kind of see it as is because they've taken that sort of Elizabethan chant, it's actually not medieval. I see it as Renaissance.
Renaissance, absolutely.
It's like that, or pre-Renaissance. Is that sort of, because we always think of Elizabethan as that's Elizabethan the same time as Michelangelo was doing, ish. We're within a couple of the sort of Tudors at the same time as the Tudors and Stuarts. People were in Italy were actually making amazing, cool architectural things and art, and so we've got to like remind ourselves that. And I think there were flintlocks coming very soon, but we can ignore. I think that the settings. Have you seen the pictures they have of Sigil? And there are some great ones in the Cage, which is the other book that I did as teacher's pet reading, because I've read the other one, and that's my background to my computer screen is the guide to Sigil into the Cage is my background. But it's covered in these blades. It's very gothic. It's very much like, I think you've got to think of very tall houses, like so sort of slightly Flemish architecture mixed with, there's a little bit of sort of Chinese styles and like pagoda, a Japanese sort of pagoda style architecture. It influences in a lot of them, as well as very alien things with these blades coming up. I think of the mortuary is particularly kind of like quite futuristic, but in it still in a very medieval way. And so I think it just blurs that line in terms of its aesthetic of being quite modern in some ways, but it's really Gotham-y as well.
Yes,
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned its shape, obviously. Well, we did mention it last week, but it is the city itself is a torus-like shape that encapsulates over a spire in the middle. And so, as you said, you did mention it briefly about the fact that it's like Halo, isn't it? You look, if you played the game Halo, you see the other side of it. But because of that, it's like you think of things like Spirewood is always like a distance. It's not like east-west. You have sort of inwards and outwards, and so.
Artificial light and day as well, because like you look up and you see eventually you'll see the lights of the other, basically the curvature. So I definitely think, again, is that scene obviously in Inception everyone remembers of, obviously this town, it's warm. It's obviously not as close, but it has a similar thing. It is kind of, for me, it's like absolutely bonkers in that sort of respect. Like looking up and just seeing the twinkling fires of the other district that you could walk to, or use one of the sedan chairs, this taxi service that they have as well, which I bloody love.
Yes, they are cool. They are very but the thing is, it's that particularness to it that gives it such a quality, because it's got slightly different architectural style than your standard bricks and stone, because it's got lots of metal in it, as it says, rather than other materials, and then it's got this language that is different, and it's got this completely crazy shape to it, and like when you're talking about the sort of geography of it, it's got that idea of it's being built over and expands and contracts as necessary. So you can do your diagonally, diagonally,
things
sort of
pop up,
shifting and warping, and suddenly you're in a maze. So you very much, someone stole that for Stephen Strange, Doctor Strange, didn't they? The mirror realm is definitely the mazes that the Lady of Pain creates, because you suddenly you walk down an alleyway and then suddenly, oh fuck, I'm lost in the maze.
No, I've been taken. Shit. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I want to say, so he said, like, don't make magical like items and machinery. Any items you have to feel magical. They have to have that element of it, because of this whole idea, as we were sort of saying, it's not science fiction, it's not this, it is this medieval stuff with magic. And I just think that having those tenets to build on, along with the philosopher factions as well, it's so different. I know I sound like a complete idiot, like, oh, I've not done this before, but I was just like, that sounds so much more interesting than maybe everyone always talks about the Domains of Dread and this, and obviously Barovia and the Curse of Strahd, because maybe we've gone through our vampire period, I don't know. And I'm just like, but this is, obviously you can do so much with this, but maybe it requires more buy-in from the DM and the players, rather than, like, they're like, oh, vampire hunting, we can totally do that. I don't know, it just, like, for me, I'm just like, that's really interesting. I want to delve into that deeper, and I don't know, maybe it's just popular culture comes to the forefront over stuff like this, perhaps, but I don't know.
No, I know. I just think it could be, and I think I really hope it does well. It sounds like the D&D movie is doing really well, so maybe we could have a Planescape movie. I think the game was is considered one of the greatest of those Baldur's Gate, Planescape, those sort of 2.5D isometric games. It always comes across. So, I mean, you're talking about, I found that piece that's in that book called The Realities of Impossibility is the term it calls it, and it's just like, it's so lovely, and the thing that you're talking about, like, it's a fantasy setting, but use these portals, and the way it gives you really good descriptions, and I think a really good example of how to understand how Sigil works in a sort of, in this metaphysical way and a sort of fantasy way to create things that are everyday, which is like, how does it get water, right? So it has a portal to Thalasia, for example, which is the realm of where the Oceanus, ocean exists from and starts from. So it just has a portal to that goes into into a system, a network, and that's how you get water. But the other way it gets water is there's a place called the Ditch. Now this is bad water, if you know what I mean. Like, that one's drinkable. The other one,
with a name like the Ditch, I've got to be honest.
Well, the Ditch is a natural portal that goes, which is a tributary of the River Styx.
Oh, no,
so it comes into this ditch, and it's such a great. If I want to get this map up in the background, if I can, in the video that I sent you, but if you go to it on the map and you zoom in, it shows this. There's loads of really cool aspects around it, and it goes into under the Styx, then runs from the ditch into and under Sigil, and you can use it as an underground transportation network. So, the Sigil's version of the subway is a River Styx boat access.
A riverboat.
A riverboat on the River Styx, which has tributaries that will randomly head off and shoot off to Pandemonium if you're not lucky. So, like, it's such a great, like, that's kind of a good way of understanding how it makes its own version. When you want to make your own version of reality, like, you want to transport something, you can do anything. Think of those amazing engineering things, but do it in this way. You know, like, maybe you wanted to fly up between one side of the cage and the other. Maybe you make a portal from Bitopia on one side and make a portal to Bitopia on the other side, and use the little, the little balloon things.
Yeah,
the little balloon things that they have.
Yeah.
And you could have a little transport network that goes between the two, or something like that. I don't know. Just it's those sorts of thinking that is kind of again is so.
Really outside the box on that front as well.
Yeah.
And just to finish up on like that sort of feel of it. There was in the book it talks about, obviously I sort of mentioned those sedan chairs and stuff. Obviously you got the harmonium patrols and stuff like that. You've got those the touts and the factotums that sort of help you out with that. But the one that I sort of noted out was they're called the light boys, but essentially it's those little urchins that do like lamp lighting. So
yes, the light boys. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just again I don't know if you've seen the new Mary Poppins films, but there's a whole like bit with I can't remember his name now, but the guy that's playing basically the lamp lighter, and they do a whole song about the light fantastic. So that's why I just see all these small children just singing songs whilst they're lighting.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo. Yeah,
Lin-Manuel Miranda. There you go. That's the most.
Oh right, yeah.
But yeah, so he wrote all the music to that new film. So anyway,
I haven't seen the new one actually, but I remember I've seen the old one.
Yeah.
But it's those sorts of things. It kind of got a hint of Victoriana to it as well because of that as well. And I think again, that sort of dynamic of the factions don't always play on when you're there, and they are so ingrained in the workings of the city. Like we always talk about politics.
Yeah.
We talk about geography. Well, we've kind of the other things to like mention on geography are like razor vine, which is
awful.
This horrific, basically razor wire, but as a vine that grows and is like a bit like Japanese knotweed in this country, where it just sort of overgrows really quickly and you can't control it. You have these Eoskian hounds as well, which are left over from Eoskar, which is the old god of portals, who the Lady Pain killed and is now floating as a dead god in the astral sea. So that's nice.
Classic.
Just classic Lady of Pain on a Tuesday.
Oh.
And so that's sort of the geography. The politics is, and the geography is dominated by these huge temples or like homesteads of all of the factions. And with those that they I don't know where I was train of thought was going there. I had a thought train and I lost it. I was going on choo-choo. Oh yeah, we were talking about the lamp boys. That was it. The light boys.
Yeah, light boys.
And it was just the fact that the way that they have come about, and it mentions in the book, is like they went around. The theory that there used to be lights, that the Dabus, who are the people who the Lady of Pain is like, that Lady of Pain's minions, who do they come from Sigil or not? But they would make the city run. They used to have little lights that they kept up, but then someone went round and smashed them all, and then the lamp boys appeared. To make money off it, and it's that kind of.
Always a hustle going on.
Exactly. That's the other thing. Yeah, as you said, don't make things nice and cutesy. It's always like there's always everyone's vying for power.
But it's not as cutthroat as we would assume it is, because it is in a place that is neutral, and it's a place of meeting and stuff like that.
But it's because but the Lady of Pain always helps to manage. If one faction gets more strong than the other, she'll make sure that keeps the balance.
Well, she has done. One of the factions disappeared, right?
Well, lots of the factions that we find in here are not the original factions. They shift and change, and famously, as much as D&D's famous, but Planescape is, the last official adventure guide for Planescape was called Faction War, and it's a really great one of the best cover arts in D&D ever, I'd say, which is you've just got a picture, and you know how Planescape's always got Plane, the Lady of Pain symbol, and then Scape, right? The Lady of Pain symbol is missing, and there's a picture of her face. It's all in black, with her face like sort of etched in, and a red tear coming down her face.
No.
And it's basically like Faction War, and it basically all the factions go to war, and someone's like pulling all the strings. People didn't actually like how it ended up because it ruined the game, but it was Monte Cook, and it was meant to be a second one, but they never made the second one.
Right. So it's
but
left on a cliffhanger.
It's always left on a
perhaps, or-
cliffhanger. But maybe they'll do it in this new one.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I mean, obviously they've been talking about the factions and that idea in some of the Unearthed Arcana we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be some, because it makes sense that there would be at some point proper clashes between a couple of them, and like we've seen that with the Ravnica stuff, where obviously there's all these guilds.
Always comes to mind. Yeah.
Always comes to mind. Again, I know that's my way into this, but I assume you have the other way into it when you come to Ravnica. You're like, yeah, it's just like these factions.
Yeah, well, that is exactly what I was saying when we did Ravnica, and
Yeah.
and that's why I love Ravnica as well. But I think it is political intrigue. But whilst Ravnica is very much more municipal, in the sense of like there is municipal people within these factions, but there's definitely. It's definitely much more.
It's definitely more
it's much more
sci-fi. on that
Sci-fi,
front,
and more. But this is much more broader in the sense of like.
Yes.
Some factions are really not interested in other factions. Really, they are like the one that comes to mind is the I need to find it. Give me 1 second.
Have a Google.
I'm gonna have a look. The Transcendent Order. So the Transcendent Order come to mind, which is like their whole philosophy is just about that sort of science of immediate thought and becoming one with like mindfulness and sort of removing all thought, very sort of meditative, and action is always your immediate action, so that you become so immediately aware of your surroundings that anything happens, and it's all done through training. And their home is called the gymnasium, and that's their sort of.
Yes.
And they have these spaces within the gymnasium, like they have what they call sensory deprivation chambers.
Yeah.
It's one of their key areas that you can go to, and you sort of hang in this. It's a portal to another realm where they're literally hanging in space, and you've got to hang there for hours and sort of like find, inner truth. Their relationship, but their relationship to other places is like, who gives? They're not really bothered. They think everyone else is crazy for doing all the hard thinking and getting, but they're just like, they're not. People don't like them because they're not bothered about anyone. Whilst others, like the Harmonium, just want to get in everyone's business.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, it's definitely on different scales of like getting into everyone's business or no business, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that the going into sort of the general sort of like what services and what sort of things. I think the key thing it sort of comes across to me, and obviously I know it makes it quite a lot, saying like this is a meeting place that's supposed to, it's a tourist destination of sorts, but also it means that you have to appeal to different kinds of clientele. So the taverns, for example, won't be like a general tavern for all. It might be like for certain folks who are, who might not have like a humanoid shape, or they might have, different beliefs, stuff like that. So you'll have all different kinds of taverns doing that. Now that sounds really interesting, and I think it's something I would love to see more of that, because we go certainly in London, you'll have supermarkets that are dedicated to certain types of food. So like you'll have the Polish food shop, or you'll have the Japanese food shop, all that sort of thing, where and the signs are in those languages, and it's like it's obviously it's a home from home for them, and it's trying to make their passing into the accommodations. Certainly here, if you think in Playscape, if you're having those sort of accommodations or food places that are catering to these clientels, it just makes it easier for them to before they go on to their journey. And I just thought that was, again, a really obvious thing. I know, but I was like, actually I didn't really think about it. I don't think about that when most of my adventures are on the prime material plane.
Yeah.
Why would I think about it?
It's like a space station / sort of, but like it's, when you go to the airport, you get little variations of like different like cultural experiences, but they're very non-spaces, and we could all get into non-spaces and stuff like that. And Sigil has that element to it, this sort of liminal space between everything, and so it's got to cater to everyone. And you're right, there are I've picked it up more in the sense of like there are definitely like bars and pubs which are much more like focused on the lower planes and like, so where demons and devils go to sort of like make deals and stuff like that. But then those places are also just places where you just might end up when you're having if you do the pub crawl, as I said in the cage guide, there's pub crawls that you could do. And but I think remembering that this place is the International Space Station sort of the multiverse, and so with that all cultures and all of these realities merge into one space, and so express that and experience that and really enjoy the ability to give your players those tastes of the other planes, and that's the whole benefit of starting a sigil, because you can go to the Oarsman is a pub that comes to mind, which has one of those Styx rivers underneath. You can get out from your Styx boat and you can get onto the Styx from underground, and that's a famous place for lots of lower plane beings to go to, because they can take the river Styx in and out of Sigil that way. Without having to interact with Sigil, and they can come and have secret clandestine meetings about the Blood War, and an Arcanoloth might meet with another Arcanoloth to hand over some names and stuff like that, or have a chat in the corner with a Yugoloth about the Blood War or whatever. But you can go there, and I think, it's not like, and I think you can maybe take your players there. They have to go and meet someone in one of these places and have this opportunity to sort of interact in a safer way for a lower level characters than go to the Abyss. You can meet them in Sigil, and it's sort of this middle ground, but you can have interesting drinks and all those sorts of things, and can relate.
And when you mention this idea of pub crawls and stuff, what has come to my mind instantly as someone who is like prop DM, that sort of thing. If you're meeting a person, or even if you're meeting online and stuff like that, sending the ingredients to people's houses so that they can make up the drinks they're about to drink and stuff like that, or having breaks and then having, because obviously we've got the D&D cookbook and all that sort of malarkey, but you could easily come up with snacks, stuff like, as if you were doing these sort of pub crawls, which would be amazing, but also probably get very sloppy in terms of role play. I'll just do another shot. Oh no, and the Abyss shot. Woo.
But exactly. And I think the other thing to note on that is that this, because of the Lady of Pain's power, that's why the Blood War doesn't spill on to Sigil. So you've got demons and devils interacting with one another and trade occurring between them, and so there's I think that makes it there's something kind of nice about it as well. Everyone sort of is happy together in Sigil, and everyone's sort of treated with the same respect in a sense, which is actually another thing that is quite positive in D&D. It's surprising that we have to mention when these positivity things happen, but it does happen, and it's Sigil creates that, obviously through someone being really overly powerful and stopping people from being mean to each other, but actually what it does create is beings that then come from those planes and set up shops and stuff like that, and you get these really amazing shops. And there's one, I forget the name of it, which is a hag who runs a Tower of Curiosities, and it's right in the center, and there are no stairs up to all the other floors. So there's loads of floors, but to get up to them you have to be magical to be able to rise up to the other floors to look at the things, or she sends them down. But she doesn't appear like a hag, she just appears like an old lady, and that she's not very powerful, but she's actually one of the most powerful beings in Sigil.
Oh, no.
And if you end up in that building alone with her, she might you might find yourself in trouble, sort of thing. It's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of that's the reality of it. So you can really mess with your characters and your players, basically, with these things.
Well, you know me, I'm always that sounds fun, let's do that. So with the geography of it, so we've sort of referred to it a little bit. I think before going on to saying who the Lady of Pain is, I wondered if we could talk about the different wards. There's 6 sort of wards. As far as I could tell, they're just sort of useful to be it's in this ward, rather than they're not defined by physical boundaries per se, because they're sort of like you were saying before, they're sort of very liminal space where sometimes it just changes and warps, and some wards are much bigger than others and stuff. So I just wondered if we could just chat in general, a sort of an overview of the wards that are there in Sigil.
There is. It says in the book that we've read together, the Planescape Sigil and Beyond. It definitely does say that, and in the cage, it actually does give them more of a definition, and I think it's quite a good one, so I might just use this to explain them. Sigil's 6 wards are the lower ward, where things are made, the market ward, where they're sold, the clerk's ward, where the ownership is noted, the guild ward, where the craftsmen gather and train apprentices, the hive, where the poor, the bubbers, and the barmies are kept out of everyone else's sight, and the ladies' ward, the richest and most powerful of them all, where the city's rulers and criminals dwell. So that is that's the sort of definition of it, and so that's as it's written in there. And so it kind of and those wards are defined a little bit by what they entail. So as you said, but they shift and change, because if all the factories move west or one way round, the the lower ward, which is where things are made, will just move with it to make that the ward. So it's just the lower ward is wherever the most factories are, or the forges are, and the market ward is just where most of the things are sold. Wherever that is, and the guild hall will always be where the guild hall is. But the for example, like the hive, which is like this sort of very maze-like, very much like I remember in Skyrim when you go down the steps to the lower level, or that lower part of Diagon Alley or whatever, those sorts of areas. Nocturne Alley and stuff like that. It's that very close streets, the shambles in York sort of thing for the Northerners.
God, yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Sort of like tight-knit streets, and everything you kind of get lost, and it's all a bit dark, and it goes underground for a bit, and then you come out again, and then you end up in the ditch, and you find in these places there's like smog clouds and stuff that you can get lost in, and so that's a really exciting place that you can go to. But then all the other ones are very much more city-like in a sense,
From what I understand with the Hive Ward is definitely like a tangled slum essentially. But I've also got down here the worst of all places. That's what I got from the notes. I was like, no, terrifying.
Yeah. And so and those are the wards, and they sort of do help define things, and certain buildings. So the key faction headquarters are all sort of dotted around in all of these. So in the Hive Ward you have like the Chaositechs, who don't really have a headquarters. They sort of just meet wherever, but that's their sort of homeland. And the Anarchists as well sort of live in those sort of areas. But yeah. So those are the wards. Was there anything you want to add onto the wards?
No, not really. I guess because it's. I guess I'm always interested in having, because obviously most D&D cities will have some sort of wards, or some sort of like here is the market district, here is the docks, all that sort of thing. And I just found it interesting for this one, like again, because obviously already geographically speaking it's a very interesting thing, like it's in a circle per se rather than laid horizontally and has defined like that. But also as I was saying before, like it just shifts around, and like you said, if something moves, it moves with it, but everyone just agrees on it. They don't worry too much about it, which I kind of I just really liked. But the other sort of note is like the ladies' ward. I thought was really interesting. It just said it's the quietest and most orderly in the city, and you're like, and then it also says it's cold and lifeless, and I was like, that makes absolute sense. Like anything that's properly
it's like going
ordered.
to the city of London.
Like if you go to the city in London, it's dead because there's so much power and so much like things contained in those buildings. I get that feeling quite a bit. I can imagine Lady of Pain's ward, or the ladies' ward, sorry, is definitely on the weekend it's dead. Like there's nobody there.
There's nothing happening on the weekend.
No one goes to that. No one goes to the shopping mall there.
It's very true, and that is what it is like as someone who lived near it. It's that sort of thing. Whilst the lower ward's a bit more like Soho.
Yes. Very messy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, messy,
Soho,
but also got exciting and interesting things.
I guess it's Soho or Clapham, depending on where you are. Again, these are very
probably
London-centric.
Soho 30 years ago or something like that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, these are very London-centric references, folks.
Yeah, but Critical Role and all those other places all talk about like LA, like everyone knows the I-90, so we can talk about London, right?
That's true. Yes. Okay, it's fine. Well, let's talk about the sort of the figurehead of us all, this Lady of Pain character. Again, because you can't talk about Sigil without referring to her in some way, and the fact that this deity, as far as I understand it, is that nobody really knows much about her, but she can just be walking down the street and everyone just avoids her. And
walking? She floats above the streets.
Oh, excuse me. Floats above the streets. Yeah. And that it's kind of terrifying. It's almost like acknowledging, but also not acknowledging that she's there, because you don't want to draw her ire, you don't want to draw her attention.
You cannot. She does not want to be praised. If you praise her, she will blood you, basically, which is like, and if you try and talk to her or stuff like that, they say, those who try interfering with her erupt in horrid gashes just at the touch of her gaze. Wise bloods find business elsewhere on those rare times she passes down the way. Eventually her image fades and she vanishes into nothingness. Natives of Sigil view her with fearful awe, as she is the uncaring protector of their home. And she's such a cool looking person. She's got these amazing blades coming out of her face. I saw someone made this like 3D, which I will try. I got rights to use the thing before on the show, so I'll try and get it again to see if we can get the background. Someone made a metal face, like the image of it, and it is beautiful. And it's just such a. It's so, again, it makes it so unique. It's very Amidala, Princess
Yes.
Amidala.
Very much so. That's what.
Yeah.
Yeah, the image I got from that. It's interesting. Like they talk about her like just keeping the peace. It's not like there's no anarchy here or anything like that. And again, it
Apart
goes
from the anarchists.
apart from the anarchists, of course. But well, you don't want it. But the it's interesting because they say like, well, really, she's described she's not really a woman. She's not really a human. She's probably some greater power, but nobody really knows. But yeah, there's this line that made it sort of keeps distant from the hurdy-burl of the cage itself and never speaks. And is little is and it's interesting again coming to that sort of like running a game in Sigil, running a Planescape game, using like the players should never meet her, you know, or should only meet her in like bits and pieces to really encapsulate the mood of the Planescape. That's what it was advising in the book, which I thought was really interesting because, you know, it's that sort of like Chekhov's gun, so like Chekhov's Lady of Pain. Like you see them in Act 1, maybe you'll meet them in Act 3, but exactly. I'm like, do you want to meet them in Act 3? I don't know if I would want to meet her in Act 3.
Exactly. There is a book is on my to-read list which is called Pages of Pain, which is a book from her perspective, which is actually quite interesting.
My god, amazing.
Which sounds really good. I think there's a really good story just to explain like her age and where she's from.
Please.
But obviously, you know, so 10,000 years ago, so she not always had access to mages. It says this is from the In the Cage, a guide sigil. For once, she cast Pretenders to the Throne of Blades into Agathon, the third layer of Pandemonium. So, you know, that's where we went to in Pandemonium. That's where all those treasures are held, and they turn to stone after a period of time. And that's what she used to do before she had this power of mazes. So she 10,000 years ago, Shekalor, who's a famous name that comes up a couple of times in other books, greatest major city sigil, sought to increase his already formidable power, and the tale says that like many others he wanted to seize the lady's throne, but unlike others he was cautious and wary, for many had failed before him. He sought an almost successful usurper entrapped in Pandemonium, but in the end of the plains, so there is someone already in Pandemonium who nearly took her down. He went all the way there to find this usurper, which I think we had hints of in Pandemonium.
I think we did, yeah.
But in the end, the plains dangers destroyed him, and he died burning from within before a crowd in the city courts. So, like,
fuck.
So
Damn.
That's how she sort of said, don't try anything.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the expansionists, which are the other ones that she cast into the mazes.
Yes. Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of, is the expansionists. But yeah, again, that sort of like her appearance should only be to reinforce the wonder and the mystery of the whole place. And and like doesn't give out missions or powers. Compared to other things we've seen, again, I know this might sound really obvious, but like, you know, you've in other planes and stuff where it talks about deities and their realms and stuff. It's like, well, you can meet with their proxies and you can do this and you get some, you know, spell keys or power keys. Here it's like, don't. Don't.
She does have her proxies, which are the Dabus, though. In theory, I think they are the basic proxies. There are, you know, petitioners and proxies of the other neutral plane sometimes live here, but there are none. The only closest to them are the Dabus, which are this Grinch-looking like characters that speak in rebuses, which are those sort of pictograms.
Sort of, pictograms and stuff. Aren't they the ones? I have it in my head that they're the ones who eat the razor vine, or do they get rid of the razor vine?
They do, right? Yeah.
Do they eat it, or did they just like garden it? Essentially, I for some reason I thought they ate it, and now I'm now really doubting that as a result. That's also a horrible image in these Grinch-like creatures.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They are they're a really interesting like sort of creation, and the way they interact, and this sort of like these sort of they're kind of like modrons in their own way, in that they're of this plane, and they're very much like connected to it in this very way that you can't really interact with them in a perfect sense, and they do try and communicate with people a bit more, and they can telepathically sort of imprint these images into their mind. But I think I think when I've used them, I've allowed them to speak to them telepathically, because I think it makes it a lot easier than trying to explain rebuses all the time.
Also, certainly on a stream as well. Like I guess in person, then you can have a little bit more fun or a little bit more time to do like pictorial like grams or like rebuses as well. So, but let's talk about it, because you've sort of mentioned it a little bit. These idea of the mazes. Again, they're sort of I loved it. They're literally like tiny little demi-planes where you was it the grandest of Sigil's punishment, and she saves him from the worst threats to her power, because that is it. It is her power.
Yeah.
And there was this phrase that just said like special bird cages. Essentially, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It makes me feel so ill. Because that's a power that all she sees them as like little canaries that she can just do away with at any point. And just having that over, and as you sort of said, you could be walking down a street and it's suddenly like, oh shit, where am I? You don't recognize it, and it's already too late. You can sort of get into these things, but you can never get out. They're just magically the world around you sort of forms into these mazes. It's,
Exactly. I think the mazes is such an interesting sort of thing to like. I think that you could use with your characters as well as like a real like let them test their strength, let them push them to it. You could push them to have a go. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's a good way to then just be like really experience it, and it's a really good like, okay, here's something you can get out of. And I think they're quite a fun from a game point of view as well as the sort of narrative of what the space is. I think are quite good. I like them.
I found it here now. Sorry, the communals, the faction that disappeared, like that they were all trapped in one maze on one of the ethereal planes. That's what I was thinking of before. That this, and again, like you said, I'm sure other factions have also disappeared and everything, but they just made a reference to it. And I was like, God damn, that's quite brutal. So now all the factions police their own to keep within the good graces of the Lady of Pain. So as well as the Harmonium, obviously patrolling as well. So it's like, interesting.
I did want to mention before, which I just was trying to find the name. Fell, I think is an interesting character, just to mention from he's in the Uncaged Faces of Sigil book, and is mentioned in factions as well because he hangs out at the Athar, the Shattered Temple.
Do you want to quickly describe the Uncaged Faces book for a second?
Yes.
Because it's very different to the other one. That's the only thing I want to say. Yeah,
it's a great book, and I think I've mentioned it before. But it's basically a book that describes, I can't remember off the top, I'll have to look at the number at the beginning. It tells you here, I think there are 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20 characters, key characters from Sigil that it gives like a description of, or like an introduction to, or even gives you like with them like maps and quests and stuff like that, and it introduces them always in different ways. So actually there's more than that, it's 40. Sorry, I've got the second page. But each of the entries is like what the first one is. A few of them are very much like your classic, like here are the people, and it gives you some things. So it talks about Akin, who is an Arcanoloth who you can buy wares from. It gives you like their abilities, but then some of them, for example, I'm just moving to just trying to find a good one that's, you can cut this bit. This one that has a good, so there's one that comes Jiek Nalar, who is a female Yankee. It comes as like a attention citizens, a notice of warning by order of Factal Saren of the Harmonium, and it explains like what they've done, and it's like a warning sign, and like known for copper pinching people of the following description: female Yankee, though she often tries past as Gisserai, 6 feet tall with stocky build, and it goes through that, and then they try and sell you mazes. So they basically, one of their like cons is to like, they've got some maps of the mazes that the Lady of Pain can send you to, and they've been to them, and so and you can buy them, and it gives you a couple of them, and over it has stamped on it, banned by the Harmonium, and it's like Maze 16, Maze 38, and it's kind of got the portal in, portal out, cool. Secret door.
I love that. That feels very much like, I know because Resident Evil 4's just come out, the remake, and so it feels very much like the merchant type thing, like, stranger, and then there's like, oh no, they've been taken.
Yeah, exactly. So that really good. And then one of them is like written as a letter from one of them to their grandfather. One of them is written, which is lovely. We talked about Mirmirs before, and I believe there's the Grixit, and I think is related to. Oh no, sorry, it is. Yeah, so one of them is Lickrich, who is an evil being who basically who hunts people in the night, and and he goes, even the dead feel dark. So he goes, hello, is anyone out there? Can you hear me? It's like that. He goes, and then someone goes, shh, someone might be out there, and it's like, you've got nothing to move your head. You're just thought land. You know, like someone's taken this thing out of your mind, and now you realise the person talking to you, you've already been attacked by Licorice, and you're just another one of their victims talking to the victim, and he stores your memories in these little gemstones. So what's happening is you be told like that you've been captured by this thing, and it talks about this Mimir, which you then meet later on in another story. I don't know, and it introduced you to Dabu using pictograms and all really fun. So
that's so cool. Yeah, sorry, yeah, no, but I think it's just quite interesting because it's so different to other people. We'll put a link into the episode show notes.
It's a great.
I think it's a. Yeah. As I said before, I know you couldn't go into this character, but it just feels like more books like that compared to and also compared to the last episode where we had the obviously audio guide as well with the primer to the Outer Planes. That was so different as well, and I'm always a big fan of having content or resources in other accessible media, it's just something a little bit different to get that information across, and also makes it more memorable. So instantly, like you just saying about that serial killer, essentially, that's such a, for me, that's like inspires of like Doctor Who horror stories and that sort of thing. I'm just like, God, that's so depressing, but also really cool. So yes, tell us about this character.
So it's fine. So Fel is a Dabu who has, turned stag, as it says, on the Lady of Pain. So they no longer float, they walk on the ground, they speak to people, and they preach. They sort of preach the word of Aosakar, the person that she sent to the other realm. And he's all up to he's just like a real but she allows him to live still, and he's a really interesting character that I think is a really good. He has a Dabu's Common Phrase book that you can buy off them so that you can interact and communicate with Dabus.
That's very cute, actually. I really like that.
Yeah, but he's a really interesting character. People, I think he's worth if you do. He also has magic as well, and he hangs out in the Shatter Temple. And so he's really a fun character that's really interesting to get. And if you want to bring up this whole Aosakarian history, well, he calls himself the only living priest of Aosakar. So he's really jabbing at it, and it also gives you this idea that one of them, the sign of one, has got a subsector called the will of one that wants to restore Aosakar to life through the force of thought. So there's using that one as a great example of that book is really good if you're looking for really interesting characters to bring to your table if you're going to play in Sigil, but also each one has a really good this is clearly a little adventure in itself, or a campaign even if you want to. So
yeah, definitely. Do you think, again, this is maybe just more of an open question, but do you think they'll have the Dabus in this next thing, or because it feels so important I presume Lady of Pain will be in Planescape. Has to be, right?
I think you have to have.
I just wonder because I love this idea of the talking through symbols thing. For me, again, this is jumping around a little bit, but when they did the Descent into a Furnace, you could download the Infernal script and write out Infernal contracts and stuff in that script, and so obviously people had to decipher them and stuff like that. So for me, that's very cool. I just wondered because this seems like a really cool idea, but I'm wondering if people might be like, oh, this is a cool idea for home DMs to do, and not necessarily put it into published material, if you see what I mean. I think they've done in these ones. Everyone's there's a couple of pages when they talk about another one where it shows you a few rebus. There are online rebus makers as well, cool. Generators, so they're not amazing, but I'm sure there are maybe better ones than when I looked 5 years ago. And I see that as also come on, DMs Guild, they'll just do this, right? Anyway, I hope so.
Yeah. I think if we're going to talk about will they be in, I hope they hopefully will change a little bit of their, just give more of their origin and also understand their relationship to Lady Pain in more detail. I think it could be. You also look at it and they are a beings that seem to be tied to the city of Sigil, but there's also are they controlled by the Lady of Pain? What is their level
what's
of...
the relationship like?
What's the relationship?
Is it willing? Is it consensual?
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a kind of... I think it's something that when you read it now and you sort of take it in, you kind of think, there's some... there are issues that could be had, that are had with it.
Yeah,
and so
of course. Yeah,
I think it's worth that being understood better and probably readjusted for a modern.
I hope that they're kept in and readjusted because they seem so interesting as like as unknowable sort of like enforcers that do gardening and also speak in this way, but also have like you see someone that speaks out against them and stuff. Again, maybe jumping a little bit all over the place, but with the Radiant Citadel, there's the now I can't remember the name of it now. The Shadow of the Sun, sorry, and that one is a very interesting one about you have the god, the sort of celestial planar Atash, who has saved this plane, but as a result, it's very much like he controls everything. There's a curfew, all that sort of thing, and now people are rebelling against it, saying like we're not, we've come from this, we've come past this corruption now. We want to have, and so that idea again, it's that inner conflict. It again is. I don't want to say inspired or something, but it feels like it is based on certain things that are happening in certain countries just now, about that warfare, about a particular type of political faction or thought controlling everything else. And that it makes for a really good story. So having something like the Dabu, who is like this go-between that sort of is enforcing this thing, but also I think they just make it really interesting and engaging, and it is part of Planescape. So it's that something where I totally agree. I think they will be maybe. I hope they are in it, and if so, that they're adjusted a little bit just to make it a little bit more like consensual, or that they are equal and they want to be working for her, perhaps. So I don't know. It just,
but it's kind of interesting because it's like the Modrons are like they are of that plane. So are they the same in that sense? I don't know. There's that sort of, because they seem very humanoid, but then also are they just expressions of the plane itself, and therefore
Primus,
so Modrons are just expressions of that reality, and they're born of the plane, and so but they just manifest in this way. And I think that's maybe what they say the Dabus are, because they think that they were there before the Lady of Pain came along, and they manage and maintain Sigil because that is their job. Like they're the ones that go around and like if something gets broken, they will go and fix it, sort of thing. That's their sort of and they supposedly live underneath the city of Sigil in their own places that you can't get to, and some people say they just live like in very low level burrowed, but other people say they live in the old city that no one gets to see, and it's their own reality. So that's kind of interesting in its way. So like I don't know, there's lots to be I think there's
lots to be thinking on that point, I guess the other thing I just wanted to mention in general about this, obviously, it is this big bypass place, the Sigil. Obviously, it does a lot of importing, so therefore the markets are going to be amazing. So if you're going on a big shopping trip, if you're a big down period, there's plenty of stuff here. You don't have to go to a specific plane, perhaps, or unless I guess you were going to get like. If you were going to get like a customized item, the trader might ask you to go get certain materials from a certain plane, perhaps as a quest hook, perhaps. But the Great Bazaar, essentially, that is, and obviously, like, as you said as well, there's night and day markets and all that sort of thing as well. So it's basically you can just it's just a good location on top of that you can go. I can imagine you go to get something, but stay for the political factions, the Lady of Pain, all that sort of thing on top of that. So it like, if nothing else, it is good. Oh, that was the other thing. Sorry, I just come to my mind. The currency is obviously everything's always exactly the same, just to make it easier. But you can get differently minted coins of stuff, and just I just thought that again, what a lovely little detail that is. Like again, you'd get it here in the UK as well, like obviously different notes, Scottish notes and all that sort of thing, all different. Obviously we're going through a change of monarch. Obviously we're going to get King Charles instead of the Queen on it as well, which is, so I guess I don't know, it's just something like, because I always notice, oh shit, it's changed. So I don't know, it's just something to mention, I guess, as a passing detail. I'm always a fan of doing those passing details for players, and then they go, that wasn't interesting for you. Well, I found it interesting as a DM.
But I found it interesting.
No,
I think that's that. Yeah. It's that international space station sort of thing, isn't it? These little moments of otherworldliness that you can add into it, of little hints of other places, and the fact that it's connected to all of them. Yeah. I think that's the fun of it. I think I was, when going through the sort of the other places to look at, I think in terms of like places to go, or like key buildings. I was just going to run through the sort of faction
Absolutely.
headquarters. Again, if you want to learn more about the factions, you should get the Factol's Manifesto book, which is another one we'll put a link to, because that outlines every faction with its headquarters in very good detail. There's a lot of books for Planescape, and it does go into a lot. And every book overlaps and gives you, like, the Sigil and Beyond gives you like a paragraph. In the Cage gives you a page, and then in the Factol's Manifesto you get like 5 pages of all these things. So you slowly build it up, a bit like learning a thing. But there's some really cool, so like each of the factions have their different headquarters, as I said. So you've got the gym. So if the Athar have the Shattered Temple, so they are the believers against like no one's really a god. Everyone's just that there is no gods. They're all just humans with superpowers, and they live in the Shattered Temple, which is Eoskar's damaged temple. Then you've got the Harmonium, which have the barracks, which is like a big guard square building where they all train and stuff like that, and it's very much of that sort of reality. Then you've got the prison, which is where all the bad people go when the Mercy Killers take them there and go to jail, and they sort of hold that, and that sort of tells you everything you need to know about the Mercy Killers. That their name is not really exactly what they're not very merciful. Then you've got the mortuary where the Dustmen live, who are all about looking out for death. So if one of your characters dies, Dabus or people, I forget the name of the people's, the collectors, who are basically called like they are like no one will interfere with them. They're these people who they go, any dead body that's on the street, they will go and collect them. They will loot the body for anything good, like any good D&D party will do, and then take that body to the mortuary, which then has planes to all the planes of death or death gods of all the primes or all other deities, and they will take you to your plane of like rest, which is such a cool place, and where it starts, the game Planescape Torment starts in there. So that's always fun. I'm just trying to find the other titles of all of them, so I'm not going to miss any out.
And just to add on to that, because you sent, I'm sure we just mentioned it as well in this, but just in case, you sent to me an interactive map of all these places, which is bloody brilliant. I highly recommend. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. It's great because you click on these places, and not only does it tell you where does it, what books it features in a little description and stuff, but it's also a rating system. Now I don't know, like as I said to you off podcast, I don't know whether that's because it's how many books it's in, so therefore there's lots of information about it, or if people have gone on 1 star, didn't like it here, died here, or whatever. But the mortuary does get 5 stars. I noticed that, so I was like, oh, good service.
Really good service, exactly. The other one with the Bleak Cabal, who just basically think there's no future for the world, it's just all decay and entropy. They run the almshouses, which is nice to look after, like healing people. Believers in the Source, who they own the Foundry, and so they are the peacekeepers, they call it. But they believe that everyone could become divine through hard work in some respects, through like tests. So you're always constantly testing yourself, and when you die, you then reborn to then test yourself again. Is the kind of belief. So they're all about this foundry and sort of making things and sort of bettering yourself through your sort of like trade. The Doom Guard, who want to cause the destruction of the world. They're the armory, because they basically want to give everyone weapons. So they've got this great armory. So if you want to get anything like any good armaments, they're the ones, and they will willingly give you armaments because they want the world to crumble quicker. The Takers, or the Fated are taking the Taters. They basically are the whole records, and also do all the like taxation, because they basically want to take anything from people. The governors do all the laws, so they have the courthouse, and the Free League. They're the sort of markets. They hold the markets, and they basically help run the market hall. I've gone through, I think, most of them, but then like the Revolutions and everyone has all these. I think they're just interesting places about going, but these are the kind of key buildings you'll see on that map, and they define each ward. And as we haven't mentioned, all these factions, when you arrive at Sigil, if you are a newcomer, they will put out factotums, as they're known, who are basically touts that act like they're tour guides for the city, but really they are tour guides that will lead you to their like tell you their belief on the way, kind of give you the version of Sigil they want to give you, and then say, oh, now we've ended up at our faction house. How weird is that? You want to sign up? Sort of thing. And so they are kind of a real part. And so these buildings, and I think taking on these factions, if you're going to run Sigil, is like, take one that you think would be interesting for your party, either in a sort of like antagonistic way or a protagonistic way, and sort of see if that would be like, try and have these factions vying for their attention and trying to grab them and pull them to their side and take them to these places and really let them see the very particular municipal buildings or ways of seeing the city work. Is a really fun way of, I think, introducing characters again to Sigil and how it works, and a really like, here's a bit of the geography, here's a bit of the factions, and here is a bit of like how the city actually runs, all in a very short period of time, just by using that route, basically. I think
that's so cool. Really, just everything about this whole place is just interesting. There's always little bits and pieces I can just really grasp onto as a DM. So yeah, it's really cool.
Sorry, I talk a lot about this because
because you enjoy it. You're very passionate about it. So yeah. That's it. I don't really have anything else to add on to that. I just think it was just really interesting and just so much to take in and to talk about. I definitely feel like more confident to be able to run adventures in Sigil now as a result from looking at this thing. Like, I feel inspired to, whereas before, like I said at the beginning, I don't know really much about it, and I just assumed it was this is just a place to start them off in. But actually, I can see you doing lots of stuff in this. Starting off essentially.
I think it is, and it's such a there's enough to do there. Like, I think people kind of go to Planescape, as we said before, like, let's go to the plains, stuff like that. But there's so much in this one little city that is so unique that you will get the sense of Planescape with it, that then can take you on these adventures in a really great way, and I think can focus and you can use that as a way to, we talked about all those different, like, the book has those beginnings, like, what are the themes for the thing? Is it going to be a philosophical journey? Is it going to be is it just going to be Indiana Jones turned to the max, or is it going to be the weird and the wonderful sort of thing? And you can define those three different ways by how you start off in Sigil, and I think Sigil can give you a taste of all those things with however you want to do it. So yeah, it's great.
Amazing. Well, what a sort of way to sort of end this part of I've lost my words for a second. What a way to end this sort of part of the DM's Travel Book Club, by sort of ending at the capital, as I would call it. But we're not stopping though, are we? We sort of mentioned it a little bit last time. We're sort of going to continue on ambling, because there are other places that aren't necessarily the 16 planes plus Outlands and Sigil. Hamilton, where are we planning to go next on this Travel Book Club?
We're gonna bypass very quickly from the astral to the ethereal, and then onwards into direct, and we'll come back to those maybe another time. But we'll cross the divide into the inner planes of. So that's the planes of the elemental planes of earth, wind, fire and water, as well as the positive and negative energy planes. Maybe we'll even then move out of the 2e into the 5e, into the Fae and the dread domains, the Shadow Realm, perhaps, but at the elemental planes first. And I was reading the intro to the elemental planes, and I was going to just quickly...
Yeah, please.
I will find it. Planescape Inner Planes, because it gives a really good description in the Inner Planes book of the difference between the two, and it says that, I think it basically is that you are going to transition from the metaphysical to the physical.
Ooh,
like the realm, the Inner Planes are realms of reality and even though in Limbo you can sort of conjure all realities, in the Inner Planes you are dealing with very real things. So I think it's folks like to think about centers. Here it is. Cages and Sigil think that they are at the center of the multiverse. Lots of Berks on the Prime think that their world is the focus of everything, although a body could argue that such beliefs not really their fault since they don't know any better. However, show them a map of the Great Ring and he'll probably think the Outland lies at center. Then show him a representation of the whole cosmos with the planes, not with all the planes, not just the ring. He'll realize his error. No, they'll admit it appears that the inner planes are at the center of the multiverse. The real dark is to those who know the ways planes that there isn't a center, not really. But in a space that bounds any spot from the center, still, somebody who picks inner planes as the core of multiverse really isn't that far from truth. They're not the center as far as location goes, but they are the choice as the center for existence. Existence is what the inner planes are all about. While the substance of the outer planes is belief, the inner planes are immutable reality. The surreal, intangible thought realms of the metaphysical outer planes may change, giving rise to beings shaped from belief and faith. But the real, tangible material worlds of the utterly physical inner planes never change, no matter what a body thinks or holds dear. An inner planar native say, believe it what you want, fire still burns and wind still blows.
Whoa.
What a great intro, right?
What a great intro, so cool. And I think I said to you before, and maybe I've said this on here, so I've never heard of like positive and negative planes or anything like that, and then the different sort of in-between stuff. Because obviously, I only think of like fire, water, earth, and air. So now I'm like, oh, there's so much more to it.
There's a
so
lot.
I'm
There's a
very
lot.
excited.
And there's amazing. We're going to meet all the Ganassi that come from. That's where they originate from.
Yeah.
There's loads of other cool beings that exist within these planes, as well as just the elementals that we know about. But oozes, because there's the quasi-elemental planes of ooze. So like we can go there, So if you love an ooze, come along.
Come with us. Get in, loser. We're going ooze shopping. I don't know.
Get in, loser.
Yeah.
Okay,
all right. Before we descend into madness, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you like this, check out our other stuff. We've got obviously our sibling podcast, the Actual DMs Book Club, where we've been doing bits and pieces.
The actual DMs.
The actual. And so check them out. I'm sure there'll be links all around us just now. But until next time, folks, thank you so much for watching, and join us in the inner planes next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.